Around Bowden Moor on the west side of the Eildon Hills is a place they say is rich in magic. It's also been said that many years ago it was a meeting place for witches. There, a famous seer called Thomas Arama made his prophecies, many of which have already come true, and, as this story suggests, in the deepest hills there may still be a strange magic waiting to be freed. In the Borders region, a long time ago, there lived a man called Conobie Dick. He was a horse trader, and he was both admired and feared for his rash temper. One night, whilst Conobie was riding over the moors on the west side of the Eildon Hills, it was very late and the moon was already high in the night sky. He'd been to market, but business was bad that day, and he still had with him a brace of horses. Out of nowhere, on the moonlit road, a stranger appeared. The stranger was dressed in very strange clothes, ones that had not been seen for centuries. The stranger politely asked the price of the horses. Now, Canobie Dick liked a bargain, and he was not worried over the strange man's looks. Conobie would have sold his horses to the devil himself, and cheated him as well, given half a chance. But the stranger paid the full price with no arguing. After the stranger left, Conobie was left with the puzzle. The gold coins the stranger had used to pay with were ancient as the clothes he wore. They were in the shape of unicorns and a bonnet, coins Conobie knew were used in Scotland in the 1400s and the 1500s. Conobie Dick shrugged his shoulders. After all, gold was gold, wasn't it? He smiled to himself, thinking that he would get a better bargain for the coins than the stranger had got for the horses. When the stranger asked if he could meet again at the same place, Conobie Dick was happy to agree. But the stranger had one condition: that he should always come at night and always by himself. The strange man and Conobie met several more times, and Conobie was becoming more inquisitive. Conobie Dick wanted to learn more about the secret buyer. He suggested that dry bargains were unlucky, and that they should go to the buyer's home to seal the deal with a drink. The stranger gave a foreboding warning. He said, "You may see my home if you wish, but if you lose your courage at what you see there, you will regret it for the rest of your life." Conobie Dick was scornful of the warning. After all, he was a man well known for his courage, and the stranger's warning meant nothing to him. The stranger seemed harmless enough. The stranger led the way along a narrow, rocky footpath, which led up into the hills between the southern and central peaks to a place called Lucanhare. Conobie Dick followed silently. Then he saw, and was amazed, to see an opening in the hillside. He knew the area well, but he had never seen such an entrance before, or even heard of it mentioned. When they arrived at their destination, they dismounted and tethered their horses. His guide stopped and looked long and hard at Conobie Dick. "You may still return," he said. Not wanting to be seen as a coward, Conobie Dick shook his head, squared his shoulders, and followed the man along the passage into a great hall cut out of the rock. As they walked, the stranger and Conobie passed many, many rows of stables. In every stall there was a coal-black horse, and by every horse lay a knight in jet-black armour with a drawn sword in each hand. They were as still as stone. It seemed as if they had been carved from marble. They entered a great hall where many torches were alight, but their fairy lights only made the hall seem more gloomy. There was a strange atmosphere, a kind of stillness in the air. It's the kind you get on a hot day before a storm. When at last they reached the far end of the hall, there, on an antique oak table, lay a sword, still sheathed, and a horn. The stranger revealed that he was Thomas of Ercildown, Thomas Arama, the famous prophet who had disappeared many centuries ago. Turning to Conobie Dick, he said, "It is foretold that he that sounds the horn and draws the sword shall, if his heart fails him not, be king over all broad Britain." but all depends on courage, and whether the sword or the horn is taken first. So speaks the tongue that cannot lie. The stillness of the air grew heavy. Canobie Dick wanted the sword, but he was struck still by supernatural terror, such as he had never felt before. He thought, what would happen if he drew the sword? Would such a daring act annoy the powers of the mountain? Deciding the sword was a bad idea, he took the horn, and with his hands trembling, he put it to his lips. He let out a feeble blast that echoed around the hall. It produced a terrible answer. Thunder crashed, and with it a cry and a clash of armour, the knights arose from their slumber, and the horses reared, snorted, and tossed their manes. He was struck still with fear. A dreadful army rose before him. Terrified, Canobie Dick grabbed the sword and tried to free it from the scabbard. At this, a voice boomed. Woe to the coward that ever was born, who did not draw the sword before he blew the horn. Then he heard the fury of a great whirlwind as it was lifted from his feet and blasted from the cavern. He tumbled down steep banks of stone until he hit his head on the ground. Canobie Dick was found the next morning by a local shepherd, just laying there dying. In his final breaths, he told a fearful tale before he died. As for the entrance passage into the hill, well, it never has been found since. Deep, deep in the hillside, that terrible army still sleeps in readiness to be awakened once more, should anyone be brave enough to command such a powerful force ever find its way into that magical underworld cavern.